all your life, 9 times out of 10 you've probably grown up on WWE, so you want to kind of have a go at it. So I understand why they do that, but at the same time, I think if you look at sort of Zack Sabre Jr. and guys like this that were involved with WWE at one time, they was involved with the cruiserweight stuff, you sort of realise, okay, some of these guys now, they don't necessarily need the WWE anymore. They don't need that exposure to take a pay cut and get exposure anymore, because they can do that on other platforms now. It's not like it used to be where, you'd probably get guys working for WWE for nothing if they could just chase their dream. That probably was more than likely. You could probably just, I don't know, pay somebody 20 quid and they'd go and do it because it's the WWE and you get to, perform on that stage. But I think in this day and age, Matt, with so many different, especially with Japan doing so well at the minute, and just sort of the independent in general is really at a high standard. I mean, I've never known in this country just alone, and I know in America it's doing just as well, but the one thing I will say, when I do talk to American promoters, including somebody we've had on the podcast, Sheldon Goldberg, he who promotes New England wrestling, he always says he hears so much good stuff about the UK in terms of its independent marketing, that there's so many places available to go. And you're kind of right. I mean, there's ICW, they do really well. They're very established now. You've got Progress that we went to, Matt, that I think is just getting bigger and bigger. Of course, they're sort of interlinked with WWE, but, they're their own thing. And, you've got World of Sport as well that had a run on ITV this year. I know that obviously WWE have capitalised on getting some of those guys over, but maybe I think really, like you say, Matt, star power. I think if you look at NXT, Matt, they signed Samoa Joe, and we know he was getting paid a little bit more than what the rest were. I do feel like WWE will have to do a similar thing here and sort of extend a bigger opportunity and a bigger contract to sort of an independent UK star who's got a bit of the name power, whether it be Will Ospreay or Zack Sabre Jr., Harry Smith. These guys, if they really want to get the talent and the name power, they're going to have to sign them for sort of bigger contracts. And I know we talk about budget, but they didn't do exactly too bad in Saudi Arabia. I'm sure they could spare. I'm sure they could spare 2 contracts at least to be that level, Matt, just to get this over the line a little bit more and get them in there, because obviously the guys that are in WWE now, Matt, that are British, they're not going to go backwards and want to work the UK scene, I wouldn't imagine. So it's not like we can really just say Finn Balor can just suddenly come back and do this. So I don't think that's going to suddenly work. But what do you think, Matt? Are they going to have to do that at some point? We know that it's TakeOver coming up for the UK as well. Or do you think that, like you say earlier, is it just going to be a slow burner for a little while, and maybe they just see how this evolves naturally?
I think they will actually have to sign some bigger names, or if not that, they'll actually have to make their own stars, which does take time. But I feel like they're missing out on some opportunities. If they want to do that, then how about a little bit of talent swap? Why not send over some people from the American NXT to the British NXT, and then they can have some matches to elevate their status. I know it's like the British version of NXT, but it doesn't mean we can't have Americans over there sometimes for some special matches.
No, I think they should really. I'm hoping that WWE look more in the European market as well, to what's about. I think it should be for anybody. Just treat it as a territory, really, that you can perform in front of a different audience. I think that's how they should look at it. I think guys from NXT could learn a different type of craft if they came to the UK for a little while, whether it be like 6 months or a year, just to learn new things. It's basically what used to happen back in the old territory days. You would go and work at different places and learn your craft that way, and it does give you more audiences, a wider range of talent to work with. So hopefully there'll be more exchanges going on, perhaps through next year, but we'll see how it plays out. Obviously the takeover show in Blackpool will be interesting to see up until that point. Matt, of course, definitely I will say one person that's probably had a decent year is probably Brock Lesnar, Matt. didn't think we'd still be talking about him at the back end of the year. I've got to be honest with you. It would have shocked me if you'd have said he'd be the Universal Champion coming out of 2018. But he's there, Matt. He seems like he's, for whatever reason, Matt, he is Vince McMahon's go-to. You know, he definitely gives this guy a lot of high marks here, because this is a guy who, you know, he's not around. He's very much part-time. He's getting paid a lot of money. But obviously, I'm not going to deny, I thought the match with Daniel Bryan was fantastic. And I do think there is something about Brock Lesnar's matches that just, I don't know, they kind of remind me of like an old sort of heavyweight boxers fight. You know, they do have something about them that you just think to yourself, what's going to happen here? Because they're all very different. They always have something unique in them that you're probably not going to see in another match, whether it be super quick or, you know, he's just going to survive and just dominate his opponent. But they're just different types of matches. But were you surprised, Matt, that, or not surprised, I guess, that WWE finding out, obviously, the horrific news of Roman Reigns having to sort of go back and sort of leave the WWE to get himself sorted? And was you surprised that they went straight back to Brock Lesnar and they didn't go with somebody, you know, not necessarily Braun, but somebody else, like you were talking about Seth Rollins earlier? I'm sure there's a handful of guys we could probably pluck out, but you know, because I think we're both in the sort of mutual agreement, Matt, that obviously Brock Lesnar is a draw. We're not doubting that, but are you surprised they didn't sort of go somewhere new to go into 2019? Because it always seems like we've restarted the year and we've got Brock Lesnar as the champion again, and I'm pretty certain he's going to be rolling into WrestleMania again, Matt, as the champion. But I might be wrong. I don't know what you think about that, but that's where I'm going with this at the moment. But are you surprised they've gone that route, Matt, and they didn't go with anybody else? Or is there anybody else, Matt? I mean, am I just being, you know, maybe there isn't?
I wouldn't say I'm really surprised that they went back to him, because he is the safe hands that they know. You know, he's had that championship for so long anyway, and it's kind of like, although people do complain that they want to see the belt on Raw and they want to see it defended more often, that's kind of what makes Brock a huge draw, because we're not overexposed to him and we don't see too many of his matches. And so when there is a pay-per-view with him on the card, it's actually one of the main reasons that people tune in to see it, because you won't get to see Brock Lesnar anywhere else, really. And I feel like, yeah, Braun is good, but I don't really feel like he has that level of charisma to sort of carry, because he is a full-time guy. He'd have to come out there and carry that belt every night, and he'd have to defend it a lot more frequently against all the challenges that there would be. And Seth Rollins, you know, he was good with the title, but I'm not too sure why he's been left in the dark for so long now, and why he's just like referred to now as the workhorse of the company, but never really gets much credit for that. Every time the belt goes back onto Brock Lesnar's shoulder, I just kind of feel like the people backstage, like Vince, Triple H, Stephanie, Shane, whoever you want to pin it on, they're all back there scratching their head going, well, who is the next face of the company? Because, you know, and I feel like they had that for Roman. That was like etched in stone for a long time, but obviously now plans have had to change, and it just you kind of think, how long does it take to come up with a decision that everyone can agree on about who should be the guy to actually get that rub from Brock? Because it's a long time coming now. He's still coming. He's carrying that Undertaker streak with him for so long now, and he still hasn't like unburdened that onto someone else. Like, it's still his. And if someone like Braun was to beat him clean, or even like someone like Seth, you know, all that momentum is shifting to them. But we're still waiting for that years and years down the line.
Yeah, it's incredible, really, if you think about Brock Lesnar since he's been having the titles, because he's always been seen, Matt, since you talk about that year where he beat the Undertaker, and then of course he went on to SummerSlam and beat John Cena in ridiculous fashion. You know, just basically destroyed him. Of course, 16 suplexes, as we remember. But from that point, Matt, I think everybody was expecting, right, that's sort of the that's the investment has been made. The stock is now in Brock for the next guy, and we all kind of thought that, you know, it was going to be Roman, that following year at WrestleMania, it wasn't. They had Seth Rollins come out at the end, and it's kind of funny to think, Matt. But if you think about it, will we look back in history and I mean, what I'm trying to say is, Matt, is are we missing something in the fact that actually maybe the guy for all this time is just Brock Lesnar? And maybe we should stop sort of thinking the next guy's coming along all the time, because maybe we've just overlooked it for too long. And actually Brock, if you look back at the years he's had, he's been the guy for a long time. I mean, if you think of how he's been protected, even the matches he's lost, he's always been somewhat protected in them. And I feel like he's one of very few people, maybe him and Roman at some stage, but even Roman hasn't been that well protected at times, that have basically, you would be a hard argument to say, Matt, that Brock Lesnar isn't the guy. And maybe we overlook it a little bit here. But, I think if you just look at it statistically, he has basically been at the top now for probably well over 4 years, Matt. I mean, it's not been a lot that you can say has been, he's really put, his investment over. And like you say, he's still got the Undertaker's streak all on him. And whoever this guy is that suddenly beats it. Because the thing is, Matt, even when Roman did win, when he did, for me, it still, at SummerSlam, it still felt like the way they did it wasn't quite like clean, because you had Braun out there and they still sort of played it off that Brock's still got this mystique about him. So they weren't sort of giving everything to Roman as maybe you thought they would. And obviously, if you go back further than that, why didn't they do it at WrestleMania? That's sort of the biggest question thrown up of all times. WrestleMania, the biggest stage where things really will be remembered. But I think whoever it is, Matt, I mean, they better get it right. That's all I can say. But that'll be interesting. Let me ask you this much, Matt. I'm going to put you on the spot right now. Brock Lesnar 2019. Will we see what we've just been talking about? Will we see that guy beat Brock Lesnar next year in that sort of fashion and finally get all that sort of equity that's been stocked up in Brock Lesnar and get that victory that sort of puts them in the forefront? Or are we not? Because, I don't know, it could go either way at this stage.
If that's the question, I'm going to have to answer it by saying for me, that hinges on how he does in the UFC.
Right.
If he wins, then I say it's a no. But if he loses, then I'd say it's a yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose it depends. I mean, the thing is, a lot of people, and me included, I don't even know what the agreement is with WWE, because his contract was up. He had finished. He signed another extension. You saw him run back, and I don't know if that's to do with the Saudi Arabia agreement, Matt, because you remember when he left SummerSlam, we were like, that's the end of him. We won't see Brock for a while. And then all of a sudden, he come out, didn't he, at, what was it, Hell in a Cell? And he's obviously, you could tell he'd been training for the Daniel Cormier fight, because he's lost a lot of muscle weight. You can tell that he's definitely staying clean. He's doing the training. But when he got that paycheck in front of him, mate, he was like, hang on a minute, I'm going. I'm going to Saudi Arabia for this. So I don't know what the agreement is. I'm guessing it's going to be, a lot of people are saying, it's only towards Royal Rumble, and this is what are making people suggest that Braun's going over. But I'm not convinced, Matt, because if there's one guy that can negotiate something on the night, it's going to be Brock Lesnar. His deals have been literally done on the night sometimes. And I think Brock and Vince have a very, very strange relationship where they both play very hard deals, but I think they both respect each other for it. And there is something about it, and I honestly think that Brock will, whether it's a proper contract or not, I do think he's going to sign for dates, and I do think it's going to lead him to WrestleMania. And I mean, given some of the rumours, some of the opponents are going to be, I know there was a massive thing about Seth Rollins. I'm kind of thinking to myself, blimey, I don't even know if that'll be the one. I really don't. The way they are with Seth Rollins, I mean, they have him lose and win a lot of the time, all over the place. They're not as consistent with him that they should be. So, Yeah, I don't know. It could be interesting, but like Matt said, maybe the UFC will determine that. Obviously, a win over Daniel Cormier to be the UFC champion